A billionaire mafia boss rejected every powerful woman in the city. For a poor flower seller, everyone ignored. But what no one knew was that this quiet girl was hiding a secret so dangerous that loving her could destroy his empire and cost them both their lives. Every woman in the city wanted one man. Movie stars chased him. The daughters of billionaires fought for his attention. Even politicians dreamed of calling him family. But the most feared mafia boss in the country ignored them all. Instead, he walked through the rain one cold evening, stopped beside a tiny flower stand, and quietly bought every single flower from the poorest girl on the street. No one understood why. His bodyguards looked confused. The wealthy women watching from nearby couldn't hide their disbelief. Why would a man who could own anything become interested in a girl who barely had enough money to eat? But that wasn't the strangest part. As she handed him the flowers, her hands began to shake. Not because she recognized him, because she recognized the silver ring on his finger, a ring she had seen once before, on the man responsible for destroying her childhood. She forced herself to smile. He thanked her with unexpected kindness. Then he left. She stood frozen long after his black cars disappeared into the night. From that moment, everything in her carefully hidden life began to fall apart. Her name was Lily. She was 23 years old. Every morning before sunrise, she arranged fresh flowers outside an old train station. People passed by without remembering her face. Most customers bargained over a few dollars, while she secretly skipped meals just to pay rent for the tiny apartment she shared with her sick grandmother. She never complained. She believed quiet people survived longer, especially people carrying dangerous secrets. Nobody knew she wasn't born poor. Nobody knew her father had once worked for one of the most powerful crime families in the country, and nobody knew that one terrible night had stolen everything from her. Since then, Lily had spent years hiding from a past she desperately wanted to forget. She had one simple rule: never attract attention. Never let powerful people notice you. Unfortunately, the city's most dangerous man had already noticed. His name was Adrian Moretti. People feared speaking his name too loudly. Businessmen obeyed him. Politicians respected him. Enemies disappeared overnight. Rumors painted him as a ruthless monster, a man incapable of love, a man who trusted no one. Yet every evening that week, he returned to the same flower stand. He always bought flowers. He never negotiated. He often paid 10 times their value. Sometimes, he didn't even take the bouquet. He simply told Lily to keep it and left. The city began talking. Social media filled with blurry photographs. Rich women who had spent years chasing. Adrian couldn't believe what they were seeing. Who was this ordinary flower seller? Why her? And why did the most untouchable man alive suddenly smile whenever he looked at someone who owned almost nothing? What nobody realized was that Adrian had a reason for choosing Lily, a reason buried deep in a tragedy neither of them fully understood. And when the truth finally surfaced, it wouldn't just break hearts. It would force both of them to choose between love and a past soaked in blood. For the next 7 days, Adrian Moretti never missed an evening. No matter how important the meeting, no matter how dangerous the situation, his black convoy always stopped beside the same little flower stand. The newspapers noticed. The internet exploded with theories. Some claimed the feared mafia boss had finally fallen in love. Others believed the flower seller was secretly an undercover agent. The truth was something neither side could imagine. Lily wished he would never come back. Every time his expensive cars appeared around the corner, her heart raced with fear. She reminded herself of the promise she had made years ago. Stay invisible. Powerful men only brought pain, especially men carrying the Moretti family crest. Yet Adrian never treated her the way powerful men usually treated poor people. He never looked down on her. He never asked uncomfortable questions. He never tried to impress her with his money. Instead, he asked about the flowers. Which ones lasted the longest? Which flowers bloomed after storms? Which bouquet people bought when asking for forgiveness? Simple questions. Questions that somehow made Lily forget, if only for a few minutes, who he really was. One rainy evening, business was terrible. Almost every customer stayed home. Lily hadn't sold enough flowers to buy medicine for her grandmother. She smiled anyway. There was no point crying where strangers could watch. Just as she was about to pack everything away, Adrian appeared. Without saying a word, he looked over the nearly full buckets of flowers. Then he quietly bought every single one. Roses. Lilies, sunflowers, daisies, every bouquet, every stem. Lily stared in disbelief. She tried to hand him the flowers, but he gently shook his head. Keep them, he said. They look better here than they ever would in my house. Those were the only words he spoke before leaving. Lily watched his car disappear into the rain. She couldn't understand him. A man feared by thousands, showing kindness without expecting anything in return. It made no sense. The next morning, she discovered something even stranger. An envelope had been tucked beneath one of the empty flower buckets. Inside was enough money to cover 6 months of rent. There was no signature, no message, only one pressed white lily. She immediately knew who had left it. Instead of feeling grateful, she became terrified. Power like his always came with a price, and she had nothing to offer. Across the city, inside the enormous Moretti estate, Adrian stood alone in a greenhouse filled with flowers. Hundreds of them. His trusted advisor, Marco, couldn't hide his confusion. You've ignored every woman your family introduced to you, he said. Daughters of billionaires, royal families, international models. So why a flower seller? Adrian remained silent for several seconds. Finally, he answered, because she's the first person who's looked at me without wanting something. Marco frowned. She looked frightened. Adrian nodded slowly. Exactly. He had noticed it the very first day. Lily wasn't attracted to his wealth. She wasn't impressed by his influence. If anything, she wanted him as far away from her life as possible. For a man surrounded by lies, her honesty was strangely comforting. But Adrian had secrets of his own. Months before meeting Lily, one of his investigators had placed an old photograph on his desk, a faded picture from nearly 15 years earlier. A little girl smiling while holding a bouquet almost too large for her tiny hands. The investigator believed she might still be alive. Adrian had spent months searching for her, not because she had committed any crime, but because he believed his own family had committed one against hers. He never expected the little girl in that photograph to become the woman selling flowers outside the train station. Meanwhile, someone else had been watching. Sofia Romano, the daughter of one of the richest families connected to the city's criminal elite. Beautiful, elegant, accustomed to getting everything she wanted, including men. For 3 years she had expected to become Adrian's wife. Not because he loved her, because both families believed the marriage would strengthen their influence. Now, every newspaper carried pictures of Adrian standing beside a poor flower seller. Sophia wasn't embarrassed. She was furious. She hired private investigators before sunset. I want everything about that girl, she ordered. Where she lives, who she speaks to, what she's hiding, and if she has a weakness. Her smile turned cold. I'll find it before Adrian does. Lily had no idea her peaceful little world was already being torn apart. A week later, she returned home carrying fresh groceries. The apartment door stood slightly open. She was certain she had locked it. Her heartbeat quickened. She slowly stepped inside. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing appeared broken. Until she noticed one thing. The old wooden box beneath her grandmother's bed had been opened. Inside that box, she kept the only photograph of her parents. The only evidence connecting her to the life she once had. It was gone. Someone had taken it. Someone now knew exactly who she really was. That night, for the first time in years, Lily cried herself to sleep. She wasn't afraid of losing the photograph. She was afraid of what finding it meant. Her past had finally found her. And somewhere in the darkness, someone had already decided she would never be allowed to escape it. The following evening, despite everything, she still opened her flower stand. Because bills didn't stop for broken hearts. As the sun disappeared behind the buildings, Adrian arrived once again. The moment he stepped out of his car, he immediately noticed something different. Lily's smile was gone. Her eyes were swollen from crying. She tried to pretend everything was fine, but he had spent his entire life reading people. Pain could never truly hide. For the first time, he didn't buy flowers. Instead, he quietly asked one question. What happened? Lily looked into his eyes. She wanted to tell him nothing. She wanted to send him away forever. But something inside her was tired. Tired of carrying every burden alone. She opened her mouth, then suddenly stopped. Across the street, a man wearing a dark coat was watching them. The moment Lily recognized his face, the color disappeared from hers. She whispered only 3 words. He found me. And before Adrian could react, the stranger turned around and disappeared into the crowd. The words barely left Lily's lips. He found me. Adrian turned instantly toward the crowded street. People hurried past with shopping bags. Taxi horns echoed through the evening. The man in the dark coat had vanished as if he had never been there. But Adrian didn't miss one detail. The fear in Lily's eyes wasn't ordinary fear. It was the kind that lived inside someone for years. The kind that never truly disappeared. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily forced a smile that fooled no one. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I recognized someone." It was a lie. Adrian knew it. But instead of pushing her, he simply nodded. He had learned long ago that broken people only shared their stories when they felt safe, not when they were questioned. As he walked back to his car, he gave one quiet instruction to his head of security: protect her. The bodyguard looked surprised. Without her knowing, no matter what happens. That night, two discreet security teams began watching over Lily from a distance. She never noticed them. She only noticed something strange. The men who usually bothered her at closing time suddenly disappeared. The pickpockets who haunted the station vanished. Even the landlord who constantly threatened to evict her unexpectedly became polite. She couldn't explain it, but for the first time in years, she felt safe. She had no idea that every danger reaching for her was quietly being stopped before it ever came close. Days turned into weeks, and something neither of them planned slowly began to happen. They stopped feeling like strangers. Every evening, Adrian visited. Sometimes he bought flowers. Sometimes he simply stood beside the little stall while Lily arranged fresh roses. There were evenings when neither of them said more than a few words. Oddly, those became Lily's favorite moments. She realized something no newspaper ever wrote about Adrian Moretti. He listened, really listened. When she spoke about flowers, he paid attention. When she talked about her grandmother, he remembered every detail. When she laughed, he smiled without realizing it. It frightened her, because she had promised herself she would never trust another powerful man. Yet every day, that promise became harder to keep. One afternoon, Lily's grandmother noticed the change immediately. "You smile more these days," the old woman said gently. Lily blushed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her grandmother chuckled. "You arrange flowers while looking out the window. You never used to do that." Lily looked away. She couldn't admit the truth. She waited for 5 o'clock every evening, because that was when Adrian usually appeared. Meanwhile, across the city, Sofia Romano was losing her patience. Every report she received made her angrier. The girl has no criminal record, no secret boyfriend, no debts, no hidden fortune. She's exactly what everyone believes: a poor flower seller. Sofia slammed the file shut. "There has to be something." Then the investigator hesitated. "There is one unusual thing. We found an old name connected to her childhood." He handed over another file. Sofia read it once, then again. Slowly, a smile spread across her face. "So that's the secret. If Adrian learns this, he'll never look at her the same way." Instead of destroying the file, she kept it. She wanted to wait. Some truths caused more pain when revealed at exactly the right moment. Back at the flower stand, Lily noticed Adrian staring at an old white lily. "Do you like that one?" she asked. He nodded quietly. "My mother loved white lilies. It was the last flower she ever held." His voice became unusually soft. Lily looked at him differently. For the first time, she saw not the feared Mafia boss, but a lonely son who still carried his mother's memory. Without thinking, she wrapped the white lily in paper. "This one's for you." He reached for his wallet. She shook her head. "No, it's a gift." Adrian froze. No one had given him something without expecting anything in return since his mother died. He accepted the flower as though it were priceless. That tiny gesture meant more to him than all the expensive gifts he'd received throughout his life. From that evening on, everything changed. Instead of arriving in expensive suits every day, sometimes Adrian came dressed simply, without an entourage, without showing off his wealth. They walked through a nearby park after Lily closed her stall. She spoke about her dream. One day, she wanted to own a little flower shop. Nothing luxurious, just a peaceful place where people smiled when they walked inside. Adrian listened silently, then asked, "If you had enough money today, would you open it?" She laughed softly. "Money isn't the hardest part. It's believing dreams like mine can actually come true." Those words stayed with Adrian long after they parted. The next morning, he quietly purchased an empty flower shop across town. He never signed his own name. He never planned to tell Lily. He simply wanted her dream waiting for the day she believed she deserved it. But fate had other plans. 3 nights later, Lily returned home to find her grandmother unconscious. She called for help. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the phone. At the hospital, doctors explained she needed immediate treatment. Treatment Lily couldn't possibly afford. She sat alone outside the room, holding back tears. She had already sold almost everything she owned. There was nothing left. Then the doctor returned. The bill has already been paid. Lily looked up in confusion. By who? I'm sorry. They wished to remain anonymous. She didn't need anyone to tell her. She already knew. She ran outside, hoping to find Adrian. But he was gone. Only a single white lily rested on a nearby bench. She held it tightly against her chest. For the first time in years, she cried, not because she was afraid, but because someone had chosen to carry part of her pain. The next evening, she waited for him. When Adrian arrived, she didn't thank him. She didn't mention the hospital. Instead, she did something completely unexpected. She reached forward and hugged him. It lasted only a few seconds, but Adrian stood perfectly still, almost afraid to breathe, because no one had embraced him with genuine affection in longer than he could remember. That simple hug broke down walls he had spent decades building. For the first time, the feared Mafia boss understood something. He wasn't protecting Lily because he felt responsible. He wasn't helping her because of guilt. He had fallen in love. Completely. Quietly. Irreversibly. Unfortunately, someone else witnessed that embrace. Sophia, watching from inside a parked car. Her expression hardened. If I can't have Adrian, she whispered coldly. Neither can you. The very next morning, a package arrived at Lily's apartment. There was no sender. Inside, she found the photograph stolen from beneath her grandmother's bed, along with an old newspaper clipping. The headline froze the blood in her veins. Moretti family linked to deadly warehouse fire. Attached to the article was a handwritten note. Ask Adrian what really happened to your father. The room began spinning. Her hands trembled. Could it be true? Had the man she was slowly falling in love with been connected to the worst night of her life all along? Lily looked down at the photograph of her smiling parents, then back at the newspaper. One question echoed through her mind. Had destiny brought Adrian into her life? Or had fate been preparing the cruelest heartbreak of all? Lily didn't sleep that night. The newspaper clipping lay on the small kitchen table beside the faded photograph of her parents. Every memory she had spent years trying to bury suddenly came rushing back. The fire, the screams, the smoke that turned the night sky black. The little girl who kept asking why her father never came home. She had spent half her life believing she already knew the answer. Now, nothing felt certain anymore. The following evening, Adrian arrived at the flower stand carrying his usual bouquet of white lilies. But Lily wasn't smiling. She looked at him as if she were seeing a stranger. Without a word, she handed him the newspaper clipping. For the first time since anyone could remember, the great Adrian Moretti lost the color in his face. He didn't deny it. He didn't make excuses. He simply closed his eyes. So, Lily whispered. It was true. Adrian looked at her with heartbreaking honesty. My family was connected to that night. The words struck harder than any knife ever could. Lily stepped backward. Tears filled her eyes. I trusted you. I was beginning to love you. And all this time, you knew? Adrian lowered his head. I knew my father's name was connected to the fire, but I never believed he told me the truth. My father died insisting your family betrayed ours. But nothing ever made sense. So after I inherited everything, I started searching. I wanted the truth. And then, I found a photograph of a little girl holding flowers. You. I prayed you were alive. Lily stared at him in disbelief. You were looking for me? He nodded. Not to silence you. To ask for forgiveness. Silence surrounded them. The city rushed on around them, but neither of them heard it. Finally, Lily spoke. If your family destroyed mine, how could I ever forgive that? Adrian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he removed the silver ring from his finger. The same ring that had terrified Lily the first day they met. He placed it gently on the flower stand. My family name has caused you enough pain. If losing everything I've built is the price for your peace, I'll pay it. Then he walked away. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't ask her to believe him. He simply left. For the first time since becoming the head of the Moretti family, Adrian chose love over power. Days passed. He never returned to the flower stand. Lily found herself looking toward the street every evening, waiting. The silence hurt more than she expected. Meanwhile, Sophia believed she had finally won. She arranged a formal dinner, convinced Adrian would now agree to marry her. Instead, he never arrived. When his lawyer finally met with the city's most powerful families, everyone was stunned. Adrian had begun selling large portions of the Moretti business empire. He was stepping away from the life he had inherited, not because anyone forced him, because he no longer wanted a future built on fear. The news spread across the city. People couldn't believe it. The feared Mafia boss was willingly walking away from the empire others would kill to possess. Lily read every headline. Each one made her heart ache. Then, an unexpected visitor knocked on her apartment door. It was an elderly man carrying a weathered leather journal. "My name doesn't matter," he said quietly. "I worked for Adrian's father many years ago. I've carried this long enough." Inside the journal were handwritten records from the night of the warehouse fire. Names, payments, secret meetings, and one horrifying truth. The fire had never been ordered by Adrian's father. It had been planned by his most trusted financial advisor, a man who secretly profited by turning both families against each other. He had stolen fortunes, destroyed innocent lives, and hidden behind two grieving families who blamed one another for years. Adrian's father discovered the betrayal too late. Ashamed, he allowed everyone to believe he was responsible rather than reveal that the man he trusted had deceived him so completely. It was the worst decision of his life, and Adrian had spent years trying to uncover what really happened. Lily closed the journal. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The man she blamed had been searching for justice all along. Without wasting another second, she ran past the station, past the busy streets, past the park where she and Adrian used to walk after closing the flower stand. Finally, she reached the old greenhouse on the Moretti estate. The doors stood open. Inside, hundreds of flowers bloomed in perfect silence. Adrian was there alone, watering white lilies. He looked different. No expensive suit, no bodyguards, no ring. Just a man quietly saying goodbye to the only life he had ever known. He heard footsteps, turned around, and froze. Lily walked toward him slowly. Neither of them spoke. She simply held out the old journal. "I know the truth." Adrian looked down at it, then back into her eyes. "You don't owe me anything," he said softly. "I never helped you because I expected forgiveness. I helped you because I loved you. And I always will." Lily felt every wall around her heart collapse. She remembered every evening he had bought flowers, every quiet conversation, every anonymous act of kindness, every moment he had protected her without asking for credit. She finally understood. His love had never been about guilt. It had been a choice he made every single day. Without another word, she stepped forward. This time, she wrapped both arms around him, and she didn't let go. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The greenhouse felt warmer than ever before. It wasn't because of the sunlight. It was because two wounded hearts had finally stopped running. Months later, the little flower shop Lily once dreamed about opened its doors. She was shocked to discover the building had been purchased nearly a year earlier. The paperwork revealed the truth. Adrian had bought it long before they ever admitted their feelings. He had believed in her dream, even when she didn't. Together, they transformed the shop into the most beloved place in the neighborhood. People didn't come only to buy flowers. They came because hope seemed to grow there. Children received flowers for free. Elderly couples were never charged on anniversaries. Every Friday, a bouquet was quietly delivered to the local hospital for patients with no visitors. No one knew who paid for them. Lily smiled every time she saw the delivery leave. Some acts of love were never meant to be announced. One evening, as they closed the shop together, Adrian handed Lily a single white lily. She laughed. "You're still buying flowers from me?" He smiled. "I'll spend the rest of my life finding reasons to." She leaned her head against his shoulder as the sun disappeared beyond the city skyline. The empire that once defined Adrian's life was gone. The wealth, the power, the fear, none of it had given him what he had searched for. But a quiet flower seller with gentle hands and a brave heart had. Sometimes, the richest man in the city doesn't need a bigger empire. Sometimes, he only needs one person who loves him for the man behind the name. And in the end, the Mafia boss didn't choose the richest woman. He chose the one woman whose love couldn't be bought. Because the rarest flower in the world was never growing in a garden. It had been standing beside a small flower stall, waiting for someone to finally see its worth.